Yay! We are now live. Hi, everybody. We are a little late for our Practice World event, but hopefully you are able to sign in and listen to our stories. For this event, which is called Practice World, we really are featuring different voices of the community. And by the community, we mean local voices in Richmond, San Pablo, El Cerrito. And I'm really pleased to be joined here today with three of my former students who I've known for many, many years, since 2009, I think. And they are still speaking and doing public speaking in their various places in their lives. So today for this event, we will be talking about three different themes: leadership, neighborhoods, and nature. And every month we'll have a different theme that we'll talk about, and people can perform anything they like, any form of public speaking, poems, stories, advocacy speeches, whatever they want to do. So in case you're just tuning in, my name is Anne Marie Baines, and I'm the founder of the Practice Space, and you are listening to Practice World. So let's first introduce our guest speakers for tonight. So let's go over to Cristy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cristy Kountz. You can call me Cristy. I am the program advisor and coach at the Practice Space. I've been involved with the Practice Space since it was like before the Practice Space. So I've just been really happy to be here and share my stories with you guys.
Excellent. And over to Will.
Hi, everyone. My name is William Bell. I am an El Cerrito High School graduate and current software engineer here in the Bay Area.
And over to Rebecca.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Dow. I was also an EC alum, and now I instruct a few of the Practice Space classes.
Yes, so you're joined here by some pretty experienced public speakers, but as they were saying in our little coaching session, they hadn't done much speaking in a while, so mostly teaching. But one of the reasons why we chose these themes tonight, leadership, neighborhoods, and nature, is just there's so much happening in the world. So many conversations about leadership, and definitely with the election coming up, there's just a lot going on. And there's also the global pandemic amongst everything else. So we thought we'd go back to just talking about really where we come from. So what kind of views of leadership was an option, thinking about neighborhoods and what was really important to us, and also thinking about nature. There's just so much happening around us that going back to our foundations and what we really love is really important. But since at Practice World and our organization, the Practice Space, we are really interested in lifting up different underrepresented voices, I'm curious to ask our little panel here, what voices you feel are underrepresented, and yeah, if you could say a little bit more about that, that would be great. We're going to start with Rebecca, reverse it a little bit.
I feel like the 99% of the world is underrepresented, not only because we are so strong and have so many people, but we don't control most of the things. And because of that, I feel like we're underrepresented, because even though we have this united agreement on certain things, they don't happen.
Thank you, Rebecca. How about you, Will?
When I think of underrepresented voices, I think the first kind of demographic that comes to mind would have to be Black women. Much of my life has been guided and really, really framed by the wisdom and the voices of Black women. So absolutely, that's what I would say.
Thank you, Will. And Cristy.
Through my experience, both educational and in my work, I've definitely seen youth underrepresented, specifically the middle school age, and specifically in an emotional way. I don't think that we pay enough attention to that time that they have when they're growing and learning how to deal with all those emotions. And I like to dedicate my time and my work into helping them specifically to be able to conquer the world that's ahead of them.
Excellent. And one last question before we dive into our speaking performances. Again, if you're just tuning in, this is our Practice World Performance Series put on by our nonprofit, The Practice Space. So we are talking about leadership, neighborhoods, or nature. You could have chosen any of those themes. So if you could just say what you're going to be sharing today and why you decided to share that. How about you, Will?
So today I'm sharing a story about my neighborhood. And specifically, I chose to share that because it was something that happened really recently and helped ground me and kind of bring me back to a proper headspace. And it really resonated with me as soon as you said that neighborhood was one of the possible subjects.
We can't wait to hear it, Will. How about you, Cristy?
I chose a story based on nature, but I've also found a lot of tones of leadership as well as community in it. And I wanted to share with you guys with you guys today. It's definitely a story that for me, I hadn't thought about in a really long time, but I've been very reflective lately. And then seeing all those themes together, it just is the first thing that I thought of.
And last but not least, over to Rebecca.
I think the one that most resonated with me was nature, because it's very prevalent right now. I've seen it so differently in my eyes from last year to this year, or even this summer from this fall. And I wanted to write something about that.
Excellent. That's a perfect little segue into hearing your poem, Rebecca. So for those out there, if there's something in something that Rebecca says that really resonates with you, please type in the comments, say hi. I know there are a lot of Facebook friends out there that have known these three speakers since they were little. So yeah, wave, say hi. The whole point of this event is to build community and hear from people just for fun as a performance series. So let's go over to Rebecca.
I'm going to be performing a spoken word, and it's called Mother Nature. When the leaves fall down and the breezes are brisk, we know it's autumn. The sun sets at 6, it's time to go home. It will definitely be warmer inside. If you look through the windows, every few months the seasons will change. It'll look very different and it'll feel very different. So put your summer flip-flops back in your closet and bust out your favorite sweater before it gets dusty. It happens every year and you get used to the change. If you move to a different location, adapting is never a problem. And I love that. So thank you, Mother Nature. I also like to thank my mom for having me, for changing my diapers, feeding me, but especially surviving my teenage angst. You see, hormones can be such a crazy thing. They start to change your body and emotions. Bones are growing, pimples are popping, you'll look different and you'll feel different. But everybody has these changes. Hormones will tell you when it's time to grow up and dictate your wants and needs. Hormones can create life until your body doesn't need them anymore. And then they will destroy us. But we all go through that. So thanks a lot, Mother Nature. People say I have this natural gift, but I think it's bogus because I was never given anything. I worked so hard to be where I am right now. People say I have this natural flair, and that's still bogus because they don't see how many times I practice, nor how many times I put into myself to be who I am right now. People say I have this natural glow, and I actually don't mind that one. That one's genetics. But don't you see this trend? That if something is natural, we have this fallacy to deem it as good. However, it's not. It's known that when work is put into something, the title of natural goes away. The natural law and ethics states that intrinsic values govern our reasoning and behavior. What is right or wrong is from you, not society or a judge. But this defines my wants and needs, but this isn't the law that dictates them. My need to be born is an expense. When I die, I have to pay to be dead. We have the need to be financially stable, but not everybody wants that 9 to 5. So let me ask you a few questions. Is it natural that people get paid $15 an hour and pay thousands in rent? Is it natural that when I get injured, I have to pay to get healed? What if we put our world to work? How much does it get paid? What happens if nature goes on a dangerous decline and can't pay to get healed? Not society nor a judge to tell you what is right for you. With all of this going on, it really hurts her. Are you okay, Mother Nature? So when the leaves burn down and our lives are at risk, we call it fire season now. The sun is our cheapest resource, and we can have it in our homes so it can be cooler outside, yet we still drill. Look out your windows and ask yourself, are you happy with this change? Earth looks so different and it feels so different. So what are you going to do about it? Stay indoors, keep your distance, and have a mask with you at all times. It's getting worse every year. We have to make a change, but we're only looking for alternatives when sadly the world cannot adapt to our problems. And for that, I am so sorry, Mother Nature. Thank you.
Yay, thank you, Rebecca. Such beautiful words and also really important ones to represent what's happening in the world. So I'm curious from the speakers, did anything stand out to you or resonate with you about Rebecca's poem?
What didn't? I think that we all also feel, I like how your story had kind of that arc of all this hope and joy and innocence, and it kind of fell into harsh reality. And I think that's just so reflective of what life can feel like sometimes. You know, we grow up, we start to understand how we have to navigate our own worlds or the society that we're in and the environment that we're in, and how all of it just kind of messes with each other, and that can be really hard on us emotionally. And I really liked how your story and your poem reflected that arc.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I can say that I'm really glad that this is being recorded, because the first time I watched it, I think I was so wrapped up in your performance and I was really enjoying it. And now I'm watching it this time and I feel like it's more seeping in, and I know I'll go back and watch your performance again because I always love hearing you speak.
Thank you, Rebecca. We're going to go over to Will, who's going to be sharing his story on neighborhoods.
Yeah, so hey everyone again. Name is William Bell, and I'll be telling you guys a story about a street. So I grew up at the end of the cul-de-sac on Fallon Avenue in the same house that my mother was raised in, a house that my grandfather, for whom I'm named, bought in the early 60s, along with a number of other Black couples looking to raise their families in the area. This meant plenty of kids for my mother to hang out with. She and my aunt had a group of 5 girlfriends. It was the 2 of them, Marla from 2 houses to the right, Vivi from 2 doors down on the left, and Donna from down the block. And I grew up hearing stories about how each of their parents would take turns watching the girls as they had meetings or hosted tea parties or played games. And in turn, the same folks who looked after my mother kept an eye on me as I was growing up on the block. Living in a cul-de-sac, I spent hours on hours on hours playing in the street, whether I was biking or skateboarding or rollerblading or any number of other activities with wheels that helped me find more bruises on my ankles. And I always had a host of neighbors that were keeping an eye on me and making sure that I wasn't getting into too much trouble, or making sure to remind me that they used to watch my mother skateboard up and down the very same street. Jump to last month, and like many folks, I had been working remotely for a long period of time in between leases and house sitting for my parents while they were spending time in Indiana, where my father's from. And it was the longest that I had spent at that house since I moved out 5 years ago. It was a Friday night after an especially long week where things had been really frustrating and grating at work. I was struggling to be satisfied with the things that had been accomplished and feeling really disappointed and frustrated with the things that had yet to work out. Around 7 p.m., I received a call, and it was from Rose, who is the daughter of Marla, who was one of the little girls from my mom's crew when she was younger. Her and her mother were having trouble setting up their printer, so I put on my best tech support hat and tried to help them figure out the issue, asking the standard questions. Well, did you try setting this? Did you look that up? Well, what happens if you turn it off and turn it on again? But after a couple failed attempts, Rose suggested that it might be easier if I just came over and helped out. So I scrubbed up and put my mask on and traveled the 100 feet from my door to theirs to see if I could help investigate. And while we were troubleshooting the problems with the printer, we all caught up. Mrs. Hall, Marla's mother, asked me about my parents in Indiana. Rose told me all about her new job with a woman from church, and her brother told me all about his new YouTube channel. I mentioned some of the troubles that I was having to Marla, and she offered some much needed words of encouragement. Eventually, we were able to resolve the issue with the printer, and on the way out, she thanked me, and she told me that, as always, she was just a call away if I ever needed anything. And that evening brought everything back into perspective for me. It gave me a chance to see past the things that were causing me anxiety and the things that I was struggling with at work, and allowed me a moment to really focus on the importance of the relationships of the people that love me in my life and that help keep me grounded. So that night I took some time and I thought about and I cherished those relationships, and I cherished the memories that I have of the people who have poured so much love into me over the course of the years on that street. And I was thankful for the people that are still at the end of the cul-de-sac on Fallon Avenue that are looking out for me.
Oh, great job, Will. I was hearing your story just was bringing back a lot of memories of growing up on Albemarle Street in El Cerrito, and and just like all the people and the characters, and also how grounding neighborhoods can be. Curious, Rebecca or Cristy, whether anything stood out to you.
I really liked how you really showed or talked about your fears of what's going on. And sometimes I have that fears too. Everything's so far and the world's so big, but what you need or what you want is right next to you. And that was really, really wholesome. I loved it.
I definitely loved imagining your mom in the 60s, because I love your mom. Shout out to you, Ione, if you're watching. But I also loved the imagery in your story and how much feeling I could feel your connection to your neighborhood. And I remember having those neighborhoods when I was growing up and feeling so at home, not only in your home, but outside of your home, just in that space. And it kind of takes you back every time. I really like how you reflected back. And sometimes we need that really bad.
Yes, speaking of family members, Adela Darrow is out there saying hi, Will, and hi, Rebecca. And she's going to say hi to Cristy, I'm sure, when you start speaking. Yay to my mom. All right, we're over to Cristy now for her story, Inspired by Nature.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cristy Kountz, and I wanted to tell you a story from when I was in middle school. When I was in middle school, I was part of a club called the Escape Club. And this club was so big, I remember having to look down this giant list for my name. The club was meant to show us our ability to connect to locations out in the wilderness and be part of changing and saving the planet. We as a group would go out and hike, enjoy the sun, sometimes the rain, and we would camp too. And every location we learned about the environment and make sure as a group we would clean up any trash that we saw. So we would carry bags and make sure that we made an impact no matter where we went. this program was free, and my parents were actually very involved too. So it made it feel more of a community. And one trip stood out to me the most, and that was when we went to Yosemite. And there's this waterfall at Yosemite, and it's called Vernal Falls. I remember feeling a little embarrassed to have my family on this trip because I was 13 and I was with my schoolmates, and I felt obligated to hang out with my family. I distanced myself from them and from my schoolmates, and I tried to scale this waterfall and focus on these steep steps. I was not an athletic person, so this climb was very nerve-wracking, and it was about 600 steps, and I was very winded. I was like drinking my water, I couldn't breathe. I remember going through my mind and trying to use all of the stamina I had to make sure I didn't give up, and not only for myself, but for the group. And I got to a point where I found a rhythm in my breath. And although I was so exhausted and so hungry, I was absolutely just entranced by the view. And I just remember just seeing this gushing waterfall to my left, and the mist coming off the waterfall just kissing our face, as well as the sunbeams and the rays of light just kissing our faces. And they had like all these rainbow colors because of the water. And it was just the most beautiful thing. And I was astonished to see that nature can be that beautiful. And that it humbled me. And I remember just trying to push all that negative and nervous energy out. And it was hard because I'm on the side of this cliff, realize that I'm trying to make sure I don't fall. And I remember just thinking my legs are burning, and I was so close to giving up and just being like, you know what, I have to go back down. And just when I thought that, I had made it to the top. And when I got to the top, there was this just absolutely incredible view of Yosemite, and I could see all these stairs that I had climbed. And I remember feeling not only proud, but I was way too tired to feel self-conscious, which was very hard as a 13-year-old. I realized that day, something I never had realized before, and that was sometimes you find what you need for you within you. And I felt at peace with myself. I was able to feel so confident in my body and my mind, and even thankful to the waterfall for not judging me through that excruciating experience. This club helped me feel more obligated to participate in activities outside of school, in school, be confident to be myself in groups of people. And the older I got, I realized how lucky I was to live and to have this experience. You know, I had cousins and friends who had never even seen the ocean living in Richmond. And I knew that there were people like that out there that couldn't have these experiences. Richmond wasn't the safest neighborhood when I was growing up. And although I was always cared for and I was always protected, I knew people who weren't. And I knew many times where we could have been in danger or in harm's way. So as I was growing and working and seeing how much trauma there can be in our communities, this experience became invaluable to me, because I came to understand the need for a community and the need for a variety of exposure in these activities and environments for young people. And I'm so thankful to you, Mr. I and Mr. Lau, who created that for us, that space for us, and that club and experience, for giving me and so many people like me the space to feel free and to belong to something more than a person, but to belong to this world. I am now most passionate about creating the same enriching experiences for young people with less opportunities. And I can only hope I can come close to being one of those great leaders that helped me become who I am today.
Yay! Thank you, Cristy, for that beautiful story. One thing that I feel like it just brings back this important point that nature also helps us really connect more with our communities. Even like going away to then come back. And I heard that theme in Will's as well, is like being able to go away, but find that grounding in our neighborhoods or grounding in the nature that surrounds us. Yeah, Will, Rebecca, any thoughts?
I love your story because I love those moments, those formative moments from when we're smaller, where we feel so much ourselves, and how much those kind of like reverberate through the rest of our lives. And I love hearing stories of people sharing those moments.
Thank you.
I feel like all those, you know, experiences where you're on top of something, you're like, whoa, you see everything below. You know, cue music. It has that feeling of like, I did this. I did what it takes to get to this position. And that really resonates not only for just people, but also, like you said before, like communities that need it, like Richmond.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, all three of you. If you're just tuning in now, I'm sad that you missed the performances, but we are going to talk a little bit though about the process of public speaking. So it's still useful, still stay on, and thank you for joining our Practice World performance event. So we heard a poem and 2 stories, and you all have had some experience in public speaking and help guide others. And so I just want to help out anyone out there who's watching, just get a sense of what your process was like. So for everybody out there, the process for them in terms of the guidance is I gave them 3 themes: leadership, nature, or neighborhoods, and they could choose one of those themes and create anything they want. So it's very open, which is nice, but also sometimes a little hard to figure out where to get started. So how did you figure out where to get started? What helped you choose not only the theme, but also what you were going to do? And anyone can jump in.
I was like, nature. That one really resonated with me because everything that has happened. I haven't like written or performed anything for about a year, and it's been quite some time for me. So I was very rusty. However, I wanted to keep the theme. And so because of it, if the people who watched saw it, I was repetitive. And repetition is really good in poems. However, I wanted each repetition to sound the same, but mean something different. And so from that, I based off my poem and written throughout that. Performance-wise, I got a little bit of help. I asked, Cristy to FaceTime me a couple of times, and to see how when I wrote things, I really felt what I wrote. So it's not continuous, just spillage.
That's really helpful, Rebecca. I also called Rebecca. We did a lot of public speaking in high school, so it helps to have someone to kind of bounce off of. But when I was doing this, I immediately thought of Escape Club because of all of those elements. I felt like those are elements that I learned in that club. So I really try to compare it to my own life and see, kind of reflect on how I can connect. And I gotta say, my strong suit is not speech writing. So I was very nervous leading up to this. I even told Anne-Marie when we got in, I was like, oh, I haven't done this in a while, especially live. Probably the last time was our actual live event, which is like 2 years ago. So I was nervous, but I think that that's absolutely normal as well. Nervous means, I don't know, you're onto something important. And I think that that's also what helped me and pushed me to call Rebecca and ask for help, but also try to figure out how I emotionally connected the story. And I think once I found that connection and found necessarily like my audience, I think also your comment, Anne-Marie, earlier about who am I speaking to, especially with Zoom, it can be so difficult talking to a computer these days, but I really tried to think about how I would say these things to my daughter, or, how my daughter would listen to these things, what she would need. And I think that resonated with me, thinking of someone that you love, or thinking of someone that you care about. You definitely can connect to stories a little more in that way. And the funny thing is, I coach a lot, but you never, that nervous feeling never really does go away.
Yes, I know the feeling, especially in these uncertain worlds that we're living in. Will, what was your process? Did you call Rebecca and Cristy too?
So I did not. I didn't make it into that call, but I can guarantee that my cat has heard this story a number of times over the course of the last week. But as far as my process, I think, Emery, you actually said something to me when we first talked about me doing this, where you said the best stories are the stories that you already want to tell, and that 100% played into this. I think this was a story that I already kind of had on my heart, and I think I told my mom very kind of quickly, and maybe my girlfriend, but I didn't get the chance to really go through the entire story and touch at all the points of why it mattered so much. I think it was more just an opportunity. It was like, oh, I help my neighbor with a printer, and they're like, okay, cool. But I really had all these feelings about the situation that I was able to process even for myself better, being able to write out this story. But yeah, the actual process itself, I just typed out everything that I was feeling, and then continued to read it aloud, because my written voice and spoken voice are super different, and did that until it kind of fit the way that I wanted to tell the story.
I love how different all of these processes were. And for those of you out there who find public speaking nerve-wracking or never know where to start, and myself included, one thing I'm hearing is, friendships and leaning on friends or cats, but also being able to think about a specific moment that's already within you. And all of you really highlighted something very specific. And I think sometimes when we get stuck, it's because we're trying to cover too much ground and we don't know where to start. So we try to do all the things, but we don't necessarily get to enjoy reliving a moment like your neighborhood or the waterfall, or ruminate about nature and how it's changed. So I'm curious now, when you decide how to deliver a speech or a story and you try to figure out how to speak it, how do you go about doing that? And a little two-parter, was there anything in our coaching or conversations that helped you? And you can say that it didn't. That's fine too. So how do you go about figuring out how to say your speech or a story, and anything in the coaching? And for those, while they're thinking, the people who are out there, they just had 25 minutes of coaching right before this. So it really wasn't very much.
I definitely feel like I try to connect through emotion, and I really, and memories, because everybody can relate to that. So that's how I chose to deliver my story, because I think storytelling can really bring out those elements. And when I, chose the process and I began practicing, I was feeling really almost tense. But once we started, just going over and practicing aloud to each other, it helped a lot, and kind of getting a feel to see how this is going to be delivered, but also your feedback on audience focus, as well as the elements and the words to kind of and phrases to kind of punch out, really kind of helped me navigate the arcs of my story. And I think that helped me deliver it as well.
Nice.
I think that the better and more comfortable I am with the story that I want to tell, or with the message that I'm trying to get across, the easier it is for me to kind of flow through it. So for me, it was just really remembering the story and going through it and remembering exactly how I wanted to for the story to align. And then once I got to the point where I was actually telling the story, it was more just falling back on that in kind of instinctually, and not thinking too much about the story, and letting kind of the natural flow of my voice take over the way that I actually spoke it. And as far as our tiny coaching session before this, I know that you said to kind of lean into the conversational nature of the way that I told a story. So I was definitely thinking about that, and like you said, quite literally leaning on the side of my chair as I was sharing it.
Yes. How about you, Rebecca?
For me, I think because I didn't talk about a story, when writing, I made sure to write something that I would converse about to make it not only a natural way of speaking, but also make sure when I talk, I can talk with emotion because I do feel true to this statement. And for coaching, that kind of that kind of came out a little bit too much, where there was only a gradual change. If you want to do stories and make it a little bit more dramatic, there should be a more shift, a bigger shift. But I didn't really see that until Emery caught that during coaching. So, and then with that, I feel like that really amped up the poem just a little bit.
Nice. I have only two little questions for you all left before we end. So those who are out there, stay on. And I'm curious, well, this is something we don't usually get to hear about with public speakers, but was there anything that you just really regretted, or you felt like didn't go as well, and you're just going to have to remind yourself to let it go later? We're always our own harshest. I know it's kind of a mean question, but we never get to hear public speakers say the thing they regret. And you were all so smooth and polished and wonderful that I'm sure there was nothing, but I think everybody has something like that.
I think personally, like one of my biggest challenges is talking to a computer. Especially nowadays, we have to talk to a computer, and I personally hadn't have time to memorize my script. So when I'm looking, it's really hard for me to keep straightforward and kind of like making sure I'm not looking like I'm reading, but also trying to make eye contact with you, the listener. And I think that's a lot of what we've been seeing at the practice space lately, and trying to teach people to do that. But I definitely have to practice for myself. That and, just making sure I breathe.
Yeah, I always have to remind myself to slow down because I know I can speak quickly, especially when I'm excited. It's like, oh, slow down. How about you, Will or Rebecca?
There was a joke in my story that I've been practicing all week that I forgot to say during our practice session, and then also forgot to say during the actual giving of the speech. And I think that that's probably a sign that it didn't flow well in the story and probably wasn't that funny. So
I want to know the joke now.
Joke though. What's the joke?
No, it's
not a standalone type of joke.
Nice. How about you, Rebecca? Anything you want to let go?
Anne-Marie she said about 5 minutes. So I'm like, okay. I was writing, like, oh, okay, let me just time it. It's 2 minutes and I'm just stressing out. I'm like, what else do I need to put about nature? And I'm just like bunching, everything else together, trying to make everything coherent. And it was very stressful. But I was able to do it. And it was about 4 minutes, and I'm okay with that. And I have to learn to be okay with that.
Nice. And the thing I'm letting go is the fact we started 15 minutes late because I needed to clear the cache and cookies on my laptop. There's always things like that. And I think just recognizing it, holding it, but then letting it go is the important part. So on that note, I mean, that's one of my pieces of advice for public speakers out there, and also for myself. For any of you, is there a lesson or a takeaway about public speaking that you want to send off into our Facebook Live world?
For me, it's not to be so apparent, but to practice. It honestly makes a difference. No one has this gift of doing it on the spot. They've learned this and they've done this multiple times to then be sure and confident about themselves, about public speaking.
Yes, I resonate with that one. You have no idea how much paper and notes and everything is sitting here next to me, but I have perfected my note system so that I don't have to look back at it too much, but it's there. How about you, Will or Cristy?
I definitely would say just ask for help. I think that like Rebecca said, this practice is it's challenging and sometimes it could feel unattainable, but you have to make time for it. And I think that when you do, you realize it's more self-care than anything else, especially when it comes to speaking. And it doesn't only help you speaking publicly in large groups, but sometimes even communicating with family members or being able to communicate with children and being able to see the value in conversation and listening. I think it's some of the most invaluable things that I've learned.
Thank you, Cristy. Yes, listening and collecting and remembering things, I think, along the way. That's oftentimes we can't think of stories because it's like, oh, there's so many memories, where do I start? And also the listening and keeping up that practice. Will, any advice for folks around public speaking?
I think that people are often far better speakers than they think themselves. They think that they are themselves. So I would say don't be so hard on yourself. Don't be so concerned about how well public speaking might go or how well a speech might go that you're afraid to go ahead and try and do it.
Excellent. I think one of the reasons that we're doing these Practice World events is just to showcase so many different ways to do public speaking and hear about people's processes along the way. People have all sorts of experience. So our first one, we had a number of first generation undergrad students. This one, we have different alums over from El Cerrito High School. Next time will either be who knows, a community oriented one. The themes are country and land. And so that is really linking to Thanksgiving because it's right before that. So if you have a story or want to share something, please do. And you may be coached by me or any of these lovely folks as well. But one thing I just want to say to all the speakers and to anyone out there, there's just such a power in the simple moment. And even, especially now, it feels like our lives aren't, sometimes our everyday lives have so much just kind of drab routine because we're just in front of a screen all the time, or there's just so many things like just in your life that are happening and it's just so stressful. But just finding peace in that single moment, remembering your neighborhood, remembering nature, I think that is such a powerful thing in today's world to be able to hold on to. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to reconnect with some of my old students, Cristy, Will, and Rebecca. Thanks everybody for listening and joining us for Practice World.
Bye.
Bye.